Okay, everyone, this is going to be a video for James Rockboy680, who is just making a big mark on his channel, reaching a plateau. He's got 2,000 subscribers. Congratulations, James, and it goes fast, doesn't it? Once you get on here and do a lot of videos and make a regular audience, congratulations to you. So, your contest asked us to show a favorite album, our favorite album, of at least 3 decades or more. And I was able to do the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and surprise to a lot of people who are regulars to my channel, even an album for the 90s. And in your recent video update, you said we could show more than just one album. We could show some runner-ups. So I never know if that's runners-up or runner-ups. But either way, I've got some follow-up albums for the decades. Okay, to start with, I don't really like, relying on greatest hits packages. I think it's cheating. But I did that for my number one album of the 50s. I'll explain. Number one album of the 1950s, without a doubt for me, is Elvis's Golden Records. And while it is a hits compilation, I'm thinking I can rationalize it a little bit because, Elvis was known for his singles. There weren't really a lot of albums back then. It was mainly a singles thing. And although this is a collection of singles, in a way that might be more like an official album because albums didn't really have, a lot of hit singles on them back then. All right, whatever. It's my favorite album of the 50s, no doubt about it. I have a runner-up for the 50s, Ritchie Valens, self-titled album. Really good. It has La Bamba, it has Donna, but it has stuff on here like Come On, Let's Go, Boney Maroney. Also, I got a gal named Sue and a song that's fun, Ooh, My Head. And I should also mention that these albums that I'm showing basically qualify in my list because they're albums that are either consistently good all the way through, or at least there are way more good songs than bad, like maybe 3/4 of the album is good. And that's really hard to find when it comes to these types of records. I find there's so much filler on a lot of them. Anyway, sticking with the 50s for my next runner-up, it's Little Richard on Specialty Records. That's the 50s. Now, we're going to go into the 1960s. Anybody want to know what my favorite band of the 1960s is? Just think about it for a minute, I'll give you some time. Got it? Okay, well, since you didn't get it, I'll tell you. It's the Beatles. And out of all the Beatles albums, there can only be really one that I'm going to consider my favorite album. And I've shown these albums quite a few times. I feel like we've had contests like this many times before. It's the Beatles' second album, the Capitol release, US album. I know that Matthew Smith made his video and he showed this as his favorite album. Also, Matthew and I have that in common. It's a favorite album by the Beatles. Why? Well, for one thing, I grew up with it early, so that has an impact on me. But also because it's just, even though it's compiled of different tracks and it's not something the Beatles themselves put together, the Capitol executives put it together, it's just relentless raw rock and roll. There's a lot of good rock on here. It's like very up. It moves a lot. It's got even some Motown stuff on here. So it's like the Beatles do Motown, which Matt often says in his videos, and also heavy rock. And also there's a lot of John vocal on here. I mean, John is my favorite Beatle. Not to take anything away from the others. I mean, Paul does Long Tall Sally on here, and it's fantastic. So that's why it's my favorite album. And I just think it's really like up. Takes your breath away. Good rock. I have a runner-up for my 60s list, and it is none other than Bob Dylan. And my favorite album by him is Highway 61 Revisited. I think this is a great album all the way through. And my choice as the runner-up, favorite album of the 60s. Okay, now we're going to move into the 1970s already. And the two albums I'm going to show here, either one of them could have been number one, but if I really be honest with myself, it's going to be Fleetwood Mac's Rumors as what I consider to be my favorite album of the 1970s. Every time I show this album, I say the same thing. My younger sister at the time was playing albums like this, and I used to hear it from the room all the time, and I say, that's pretty good. And my famous quote that I always use over and over anytime I show this album is, this is the first album that made me realize there was more to great music than just the Beatles, and more to consistently great albums all the way through than just the Beatles. Every song on this album is a winner for me. Now here's the album that is neck and neck with it, and could just as well have been number one. It's Blondie, and no, it's not Parallel Lines, although I like that album too. It's the follow-up, Eat to the Beat, which is hands down my favorite Blondie album. It actually was released, I believe, in late 1979, I think. It might even qualify as a 1980 album, but technically it's a 70s album, I guess. Just love this whole period. I love this period with Blondie, the Cars, this kind of new wave sound that they were doing. Pretenders. Okay, that's my two favorite albums of the 70s, but I also have some other ones. This is my favorite Led Zeppelin album, Zeppelin 4. Needs no introduction. Also went with Billy Joel's The Stranger as one of my top 70s albums. Still not done with the 70s yet. For the 70s I picked also Neil Young, Harvest, runner-up. Good album, a lot of good songs on it. And here's a new edition which is going to surprise some people, happily so, I hope. It's an album that I've only just discovered in full for the first time, and it's not only my favorite album by this group, but it's also going to be one of my favorite 70s albums, and that's ta-da! Who's Next? By The Who. Okay, now we go into the 80s, and I gotta say, I feel like I made this video millions of times before, because I always have to dig out these same records every time. Some of them are different than last time, but 1980s. I went with Cyndi Lauper, She's So Unusual, as my favorite 80s album, although there are quite a few that can be contenders for best. So Cyndi Lauper took number one slot, but also right up there is my favorite Pat Benatar album from the 80s, and that's Crimes of Passion. And we have another runner-up. Oh, look who it is. I don't believe he's popping in here. Look who it is. Billy Joel again with Glass Houses, which is one of my favorite albums of the 80s, 1980 to be exact. Pretty consistent, this album. The last album I have to show for the 80s is the very end of the 80s. I felt that music after 1985 or so was, for me personally, was starting to deteriorate. And there was some stuff that would come out sporadically, and this is one of them. 1989, Tom Petty, Full Moon Fever. Great album, consistent all the way through. Maybe Tom Petty's best, or one of them, certainly for me. 1989 release. Okay, I don't really care for most of the music in the 90s, although I have to tell you that now that we're into the late 20-teens, can't believe that, 2017, soon to be the 2020s, the 90s, a lot of the music that I'm looking back on is not so bad anymore. I mean, a lot of it's terrible, like in my opinion, but some of it's good. A lot of people I don't think are going to care for this particular artist that I'm showing, but when I was looking through my records, I realized I do have an album that I like a lot of, almost all the way through, if not all the way through. It's Alanis Morissette, and this is the album from 1995, Jagged Little Pill. I learned this album from my ex-wife. My ex-wife was playing this album. She had the CD, and I went out and got the CD because I really thought it was good. But just weird enough and crazy enough with this woman, and I enjoy most of the songs on here. So I have a favorite 90s album. Now, as far as the 2000s and beyond go, we shall see. I mean, I had the Adele 21 album for a while, and well, the newest one was it 21 or 25? I don't know, whatever the one is that has a Burning in the Deep, Running in the Deep, Burning in the Deep, Drowning in the Deep, whatever it is. That was pretty good overall, but I don't have it on here. It's not enough to be on here for a pick. But I do have a new artist from the 2010s, a new young artist that I'm going to show in my next Vinyl Finds of All Kinds video, and I like her. It's a she, and we'll find out who that is in my next Vinyl Finds of All Kinds video. Anyway, not to hog up too much of this from James. Congrats again, James. Always love your channel. Always love seeing your reviews. Keep up the good work. Take care, mate.